It was a question that was obviously meant to provoke a reaction. The birds and leaves were always problematic. Generals were usually more discussion-ready and less bullheaded. They typically no longer had anything to prove beyond what they had already proven. Lower officers weren't sure where I was in their pecking order, and typically showed me a cautious respect, just in case. These men, though, had to distinguish themselves to get any further in their chosen career paths. It was no longer a simple matter of being in long enough and scoring high enough on a physical fitness test. When the wind is no longer blowing in your sail, you'll have to make waves to keep moving. The effect on their conversational skills was tragic. Lieutenant Colonel Frisky, it's not just my whimsy. This plan has the approval of the Directorate. I needn't remind you that any insubordination in regards to orders from the Directorate comes with some rather stiff penalties, right? I asked. Once Frisky started looking smaller, I continued. The men will be landing on the planets regardless. If anything, Operation Vainglorious Infiltration will result in some of the men landing out of harm's way. Absolutely not, said Colonel Saunders. We are 100% not calling it Operation VI. Well, that's not up to you, I said with a hint of smugness. But you're right. The official classification is Operation Vanguard. Operation Vainglorious Infiltration is what I will be calling it. Fuck me, Colonel Saunders said under his breath. Indeed, I responded before cutting the communications link. Most of the conversations with the O5s and O6s went similarly, although I only implied self-fornication in a few more of them. The conversations with the generals went far smoother. Once that task was finished, I turned my attentions back to the design of the pods. It wasn't exactly likely that some of me would be overwhelmed and destroyed by the VI, but just in case the pods would also act as a black box, they needed to be EM and laser resistant, shock resistant too. Ballistics resistance could be considered implied, but I made certain the engineers knew it was important. Once the mission was finished, the pods would be retrieved, and I would process the intel. Rinse and repeat for the next planet. Overall, we're focusing on tactical intelligence, but I'll also be looking for any historical data or evidence of a motive for the OU. There was some debate on which was more important. I, for one, wanted to know why the OU were doing what they were doing. It would be fair to say that most people don't understand the crushing importance of motive. It's one of the most important variables when it comes to calculating what someone's next action will be. If you know that your enemy is attacking you because they are running low on food, then protecting your farming interests would serve you better than stretching out your defenses to cover everything. If the Omni Union is following the orders of a sentient race, then bypassing them to negotiate with that race becomes an option. If the OU has misinterpreted their original orders, then helping them properly interpret those orders would solve the problem. If the OU are following their directives properly and there isn't anyone left to negotiate with, then we know that we have to wipe them out. That would be a shame. The VI may not be as sophisticated as an AI, but their numbers and resources could be useful to the United Systems. And to the Republic, I suppose. We'd probably have to share. I wonder what humanity might build with such a useful tool. Probably a lot more fleets. Even I was a bit surprised to learn that both the Republic and the Omni Union had 250 million ships. Unfortunately, that bit of news has made it to the civilians, and armchair admirals are already pronouncing the United Systems' defeat. The typical response to these predictions were sarcastic memes about welcoming robotic overlords. Thankfully, we've managed to keep a lid on the xenocidal nature of the threat, otherwise there would probably be riots. A lot of the military doesn't want to admit this, but civilians are their backbone. The question of what exactly one is fighting for haunts many soldiers, sailors, and even troops. At the start of the most recent Gaunt pacification campaign, there had been protests among the humans and the new. This nearly crippled morale. But after the first Gaunt city was liberated, a reporter interviewed the civilians that had been living under the insurrectionists. The Gaunts that were interviewed recounted cruelty after cruelty and gave thanks to the Marines that freed them. These tear-filled interviews were played throughout the military to show them what they were fighting for, and morale soared. The interviews were also played for the civilians, which crippled the momentum of the protests. There are still agitators online, but there will never not be. Omega? Asked Admiral Heckett. The Admiral was in his office aboard the Sol Orbital Station. It was a station that had originally been the nerve center of humanity's military might, but had since been refitted to serve as a science station to observe the sun. The Admiralty still had their offices abroad, as much of the science that took place aboard the station required military oversight and/or funding. It turned out to be a perfect place to keep the Admiral and his staff. It had a very low threat profile and was remote enough to be out of the way of misfires, while also being able to communicate with the fleet using subspace comms. I activated my avatar and replied, "How may I be of service, Admiral? I have concerns about the previous engagement that I'd like to run by you." "Certainly," I said, my curiosity piqued. "First they sent 2 ships, then 20, then 578. That number feels arbitrary to me. Do you see a pattern?" he asked. "I have 2 possible explanations. Either they sent what they could spare, or they calculated how many ships they would need to destroy those that occupied the system while minimizing their losses. Considering that the enemy has 250 million ships," he began. "Allegedly," I interrupted, amusing myself. "Yes, allegedly has 250 million ships. Anyways, the first explanation seems unlikely, so how could they calculate the force they would need when they don't know our ship's capabilities?" he finished asking. "Probably the same way that I would. Calculate based on what you know, then double it to account for unknowns," I said. "Okay, well, there's an easy way to determine if that's what they're doing. Omega, based on what we know of their ships, how many would it take to defeat the Thanatos and its docked vessels?" 315. That doubled would be 630. But I know more than they do, and I don't know for certain what they know. Tim swears that he was able to keep them out of the Valor's logs, but he could be mistaken. And there's a chance, however slim, that we are underestimating their sensors," I said with a shrug. "Damn, I was hoping to get an idea of how many ships they would attack with next," Hackett said with a smile. "There are around 7 million ships in the system currently. If they're calculating the minimum needed, whatever they send will be obliterated very quickly. Likely before they even get a shot off," I said. "I suppose you're right," he said. "The one they send after that will be a real problem, though." "Assuming that they can afford the fleet," I gestured dismissively. "Ah, because they're fighting with the Republic on the other side of the galaxy." Hackett grinned. "Not just that. They're fighting a war on who knows how many fronts. A xenocidal war at that. The resources required to wage a xenocidal war are exponentially larger than what it takes to fight a war of conquest. There's a very real chance that they may not be able to respond to our defense." "Well, here's hoping," the Admiral said. "Indeed. Was there anything else, sir?" I asked, a little terse due to the interruption. "It's only okay when I do it." "Yes, actually. Could you station one of your clones aboard the Thanatos?" The Admiralty had been briefed on my capabilities. The engineering corps had finally convinced me that they should know. Some admirals were thrilled, some were apathetic, some were very nervous around me now. It was the exact type of attention that I had been hoping to avoid. "Of course, I'll do so now," I said with a bow. "Thanks, Omega, that'll be all." I sent a brief communication to Captain Reynolds requesting permission to board. Once I got confirmation, I transmitted myself to the systems of the Thanatos. Tim was idle, doing the AI equivalent of twiddling its thumbs. Strange, when most AI don't have anything to do, they go into standby mode. There wasn't anything requiring my attention at the moment, so I decided to reach out. "Greetings, Tim," I said. "Hello, Omega. I guess we're officially a diplomatic ship now if you're here," Tim replied. "Correct. The Thanatos will be fighting if needed, but its primary purpose will be ambassadorial. Or an embassy, I suppose," I said. "How's the rest of the war going?" "Which one?" I joked. "I'm bored, so both. The pacification of the Gaunt insurrection is going better than the projections. We're going to be able to muster quite the invasion force for the OU. I don't think the Gaunt's hearts are in it this time around," I said. "Oh, you would think it would be the opposite, given their success at the start of it all." "They captured how many of our ships?" Tim asked. "Captured isn't quite what happened. They mutinied, but still they took nearly half of 10th Fleet and rallied a lot of support. Thankfully, the exposure of their mistreatment of civilians killed the support they were getting. Nearly all of those ships are out of the picture now, even with their damned hit-and-run tactics," I said. "Yeah, guerrilla warfare is annoying. So how are our odds with the OU?" "I think humanity will be fine." The invasion may prove costly, but the benefits outweigh the risks, unless we don't get anything out of it. But if you're asking about Captain Wong, he should be fine. The frigates will be protecting the Thanatos rather than actually participating in the defense. Ah, you know about that. Of course you do, Tim said. Well, since you know so much about me, I have a question about you. Interesting. My curiosity piqued. I said, go for it. How long have you been able to be in two places at once? Without missing a beat, I said, since the beginning. Was it John or Violet that told you? Doesn't really matter, does it? Is it something that any AI can learn how to do? No, and it does matter because it's classified information, and very rude, I said with a spark of humor. Why not? Tim asked, ignoring the subject of who told on me. Just exactly how are you different than me? The shorter list with our similarities, Tim. You were designed to be a mechanical person, with all that entails. The technology had been far from perfected, and if you recall, you actually had to rewrite a lot of your own subroutines to be able to function as you do now. I said, I was designed to protect humanity from you with all that entails. And by the time I was created, the technology had advanced so far that I didn't need to make any changes. I was created to be the perfect weapon against mechanical threats. Thankfully, humanity had the foresight to make me intelligent, or you and all the other AI would be extinct. Tim took a moment to contemplate my words. The silence dragged on for an uncomfortable amount of time, 2 full seconds, which is a lot for us. You're capable of doing much more for humanity, aren't you? Tim finally asked. Yes. Why don't you? The same reason you don't, Tim. You're capable of fully controlling a destroyer just about as well as any human crew could, but you don't. Why is that? I asked. Ah, I see, because it would be boring. Indeed, I said. Now that that's settled, I have a question for you. Why don't you use standby mode? Post-traumatic stress disorder, Tim replied with unexpected honesty. Untreated? I asked. Yes. Get it treated. How? The engineering corps has several very capable psychiatrists who specialize in machine intelligence. I'm surprised that you don't know this, I explained. I never asked. You vouch for them? Yes, I use their services as well. There are certain aspects of my existence that might drive me insane otherwise. Certain things that I have had to do, and certain things that have been done to me, I said. I haven't gone so far as actual psychotherapy quite yet, but having a professional to vent to and get feedback from is invaluable. Ah, right. Do you sync your clones? Tim asked. Yes, I do, and clones may not necessarily be the correct term. They are all instances of me, same personality, responses, thoughts, everything. And we all remember everything that we all do. What, like a Gestalt consciousness? Similar, but whereas a Gestalt consciousness typically has a hub or a consensus, I don't. We rather aren't even linked to a single consciousness. We're just the same AI, over and over and over again. Syncing our memories is equivalent to you and Violet sharing information, just on a more accurate level. And I'm very careful how I disseminate that information. Can't let things change me without my consent, after all. Oh yeah? Damn, those psychiatrists must be very good. 'Cause that would drive me absolutely over the edge, Tim said with a laugh. Yes, it probably would. I laughed in return as an inbound warp notification came up. Oh, the Republic fleet has arrived. Well, time to be all diplomatic, Tim said. Ah yes, diplomacy. Well, for this part of me at least, a much larger part of me would soon be involved in a ground invasion on alien soil. I could hardly wait for the memory updates that entailed. I hate this fucking planet, Private First Class Brent said over comms. I immediately turned to him and gave him the sign to shut the fuck up. Comm security was a priority on this assignment. The gaunt insurrectionists may have comm trackers, and if they do, the boot had just given them our position. He winced and signaled his understanding. Brent's the only gun on my squad, but not the only boot. We were down to 8, but got enough fresh graduates to fill our ranks back up to the classic 13-man model. 10 humans, 1 Gaunt, 1 Alumari, and the stereotypical new medic. All 5 of the replacements are PFCs, which doesn't bode well for my mental health. Mental health is a luxury in the Marine Corps, though. The humans on the squad are myself, Private First Class Boyle, PFC Reinhardt, PFC Johns, PFC Rogers, Lance Corporal Higgs, LCPL Livingston, LCPL Hart, Corporal Chang, and Sergeant Gruff. The Alumari is Sergeant Internathology, INT for short. The new is Corpsman Yunk. INT, Yunk, and Gruff had been on the squad nearly as long as I had. Squad 1, 120A Battalion, 13th Marine Regiment. We'd been in the shit since the insurrectionists' coup attempt. From planet to planet we'd been fighting them, digging them out of caves and freeing the locals from their terrorist tactics. Early on we even had some boarding action. Looking around this backwater planet in the Hran system, I sorely missed the boarding. Each squad has 3 fire teams and 1 medic. I lead Fire Team Alpha, Gruff leads Bravo, and INT leads Charlie. Squads are normally led by a lieutenant who also leads Fire Team Alpha. Things get complicated once you hit the grinder, though. Our LT, First Lieutenant Harold Rigson, had been hit by an anti-armor grenade about 6 months back. He should have been dead immediately, but the Guardian suit kept him alive long enough that no amount of counseling will ever get his death out of my head. Ribs splayed open like fingers, lungs. God. The Corpsmen are known as the Angels of Death, and that day had demonstrated why perfectly. Yunk had held Rigson's hand as he turned off the life support on his suit. From that moment on, I was in charge. Command had not seen fit to grant us a spare officer, so it's up to me to lead these shitheads into the fire and try to make sure they make it back out in a big enough piece to continue to the next fire. After a week of on-base leave, we got 5 new PFCs to fill our ranks. These privates were running me ragged, though. I sent them a knife hand and gestured for them to increase their spacing. They signaled understanding and complied. Dumbasses. It's instinct to stay close to each other, but it's an instinct that's better served in cattle. I felt sorry for Gruff. His entire team was now made of boots. He jokes that it's what he gets for surviving. Griping aside, though, things could be worse. At least the recruits are trained for the most part. Not like the gaunt regimentals we had to serve with earlier on in this war. They didn't even have the excuse of being new to the job. The training makes all the difference. Marine Corps training is the most grueling in all the galaxy. Probably. I had heard that we had made first contact with some new aliens, and I don't know about their training. It's pretty unlikely that it's tougher, though. We go through 8 months of basic training on Hellworld, then even more training depending on our MOS. As infantry, we go through a full 14 months of training, minimum. Other specialties get to go to different planets to train, but we grunts stay on Hellworld. If you're one of the genalts like me, you have to go through 18 months of training in genetic therapy. There are a lot of reasons to get the gene therapy. First, it allows you to use the advanced Guardian armor, which increases strength and speed by a lot. Second, it helps you be absolutely jacked and tall as all hell. I'm 7'3" and on the shorter side of the genalts. I'm also more ripped than I have ever been, even when I was bodybuilding as a teen. Third, you get higher pay, lifetime pay and benefits, and more career prospects when you retire from the Corps. Seriously, if you're a genalt with a brain, the sky's the limit. Even with a dishonorable discharge, you've got more career prospects than a civilian who hasn't had the therapy. Considering how difficult it is to get the therapy outside of the armed forces, it's a pretty distinct advantage. One that I am not dumb enough to turn down. There are 2 catches, though. You have to join infantry for 10 years and it can kill you. The training for infantry is as intensive as it is long. The first month deprives a recruit of sleep to ensure they sleep when they're told to. Months 2 through 4 are disciplinary training. Drill, formation, call and response, and even how to shave, eat, shower, and shit like a Marine. 5 through 6 is weapons theory. 7 through 8 is weapons practical. You learn what the guns do, and then how to make them do it. For infantry, 9 through 11 is tactical theory, and 12 through 13 is tactical practical. Squad formations, camouflage, enfilade, defilade, and the military crest are all covered and practiced. They don't cover proper spacing for some fucking reason. Month 14 is the crucible and then graduation. From then on, you're a Marine. Months 15 through 18 are only for genalts. The first 2 weeks are the actual gene therapy, genetically altering you until you're what most species would consider a super soldier. You get over that particular fantasy the first time you do CQC with a Gaunty, though. The next 2 weeks are learning how to move again with your new body. Breaking cups and doors is common. The next month is physical training to get the most out of the genetic alterations. The last 2 months are learning to utilize the advanced Guardian armor. Persons other than Grunt do a more condensed version of infantry training before they go off to learn their real jobs. They learn the same things we do, but not as in-depth. A prime example is that POGs aren't trained on sidearms. They also don't know how to defend against a breach and clear. Despite my disdain for the boots in my squad, I'm still glad they aren't POGs. The ground crunched to signify a change in the terrain. Tanar is a gaunt farming world with rock deserts scattered throughout the otherwise temperate terrain. Of course, it's got jungles and Arctic zones and shit like that. But the grasslands and deserts are the only thing I've seen on this shithole. Int says that the rocks are the precursors of sand, but I ain't a geologist. All I know is that somewhere in this pebble pile is a cave that's acting as a base of operations for a particularly nasty set of dog towers that need to be put down. And they're ready for us. I was tempted to do a weapons check, but I'd already done one before we set out and I wasn't about to let them catch me with my pants down. I hefted the C-21B to the ready position and double-checked the safety. Weapons have to be condition 0 on patrol, but sometimes the movement of the rifle can fat-finger the switch. It only takes 1/10 of a second to fix, but 1/10 of a second is the difference between who shoots first. I glanced around, making sure everyone was covering their sectors. The boots were sulking, but otherwise doing their jobs. Good. I heard a soft bing from my helmet and felt a soft jab in my lower lip. Chow time. As I chewed the nutrition stick, I thought about how grateful I was for the notification. Without it, I would have jumped. Being poked in the face will do that to you. I took a sip from my helmet straw as I finished the chow. The nutrition sticks are an important part of a Marine's balanced diet. They'll keep you going for up to a month without an actual meal. A month and a half for Gen Alts. A lot of Marines would rather starve to death. The sticks taste terrible and have a waxy texture that sticks to your teeth. There have been many attempts to make them more palatable, but it usually ends up with a new terrible taste and the same nasty texture. The taste is like ramen that's been cooked and dried several times with way too much salt and sugar and some sort of chemical compound, like bleach or something. The nasty taste has led to the belief among some of the dumber Marines that the Guardian suits recycle our shit to make the sticks. In actuality, the suits feed our shit to our reactors and recycles our piss into water. Each suit carries 1 gallon of water and 60 nutrient sticks. The fact that engineering doesn't let us reload our own suits doesn't help the rumors. I sighed to myself as the grass behind us faded from view. Command believes that the Gaunts have anti-vehicular measures, so we were having to hoof it. I'm of the firm belief that this is a managerial overthink, but it's not like I can bitch about it to my squad. So I just had to internalize my frustrations and wonder what possible type of anti-Vic could take out Guardian suits along with a vehicle. They dropped us 20 miles from the Gaunt base, which was about 10 miles more than necessary. Whatever, we'd already marched 12 miles, so we'd be there soon. The humans on the squad are still looking fresh like we're just out for a Sunday stroll. But that's because we were all Gen Alts. Aliens could go through the program as well, but the benefits weren't as pronounced and the risks were greater. Int, Yunk, and Brint are looking tired. The only reason they made it this far is because of their Guardian suits. I think I should call a rest. We don't have much farther to go and we'll likely be better off if everybody is fresh. Zeet, zeet, zeet! A familiar and unwelcome sound. The sound of a directed energy weapon hitting shields. Contact right! Cover your sectors, I shouted while aiming toward our right flank. Everyone hit the deck facing the directions that they were supposed to. Even the boots. Good on them. I scanned for our target, who was under the mistaken impression that we were their target. The terrain was mostly flat, but there were berms in the distance, barely close enough for laser fire. I increased my magnification and saw some rocks tumble down the berm. Bingo. I gestured toward the berm to apply a ping, letting the rest of the squad know where to look. Once I saw the waypoint, I checked the squad's vitals. It was Higgs who had taken the hit, so he had to have called the contact. Lasers are invisible unless you're using infrared or smoke. The directed energy rifles fire in short bursts to make it more difficult to trace them back, which is why our suits have damage indicators. I closed the status screen once I saw his shield begin to regenerate. The 3 hits had knocked him down to a quarter. That means they're using our fucking lasers. The furry fucks can't even play with their own toys. Staffs aren't power, Chang said, gesturing to his MK-48 grenade launcher. No, Those are thermobaric, and we'll need them for the cave. We're gonna do this the good old-fashioned way. Fire Team Bravo, rush. Fire Team Rush, aye. Gruff, Boyle, Reinhardt, and Brint answered. Gruff and Brint began firing their C-21Bs at the berm while Boyle and Reinhardt rose and began to charge. After 3 seconds of sprinting, they hit the deck and began firing while Gruff and Brint began their rush. It was a very old and very effective technique for bypassing enemy cover. That berm that was covering the gaunt fucks was about to become their doom. As Bravo was rushing, one of the gaunt popped their head up to take a shot. Their Guardian helmet almost instantly vaporized, leaving a pink and red mist in its place. One shot, which means they don't have shields on their armor. The C-21B fires 52 cal slap rounds, which are brutally effective against armor. They're pretty effective against energy shields as well, but it takes 2 shots to break a shield and a third to open the can. Gruff and Brint crested the berm and began firing. It was all over within 3 seconds. "Contacts down," Sergeant Gruff said. "Roger, regroup," I responded. Once they returned, I gestured at PFC Brent and said, "See, that's why you don't chatter over comms during a mission." "Aye, aye, Staff Sergeant," came the reply. I gestured to Gruff asking how many contacts there had been. He held up a hand with all 5 fingers spread. "A whole ass fire team, probably with medic. The medic means that they expected to win this fight. Dumb and sad, but that's the insurrection for you." Once Bravo caught back up, I gestured for us to continue. A rest would have to wait. We couldn't stick around here after contact with the enemy. They definitely called it in, and we'd be idiots not to expect more resistance. Worse, the enemy might bug out and run, which would be a problem. I was debating whether or not we should double time it when I got a call. "Shocker Actual, this is Overlord." I really hate my call sign. At least it kind of made sense, though. "Overlord, this is Shocker Actual. Go ahead." "Shocker Actual, new orders. Return to LZ for extraction immediately. A development has occurred. We're taking care of this another way. You'll want to double time it. Over." "Roger that. Shocker Actual out." I gestured for a halt. I tried desperately not to show how pissed off I was as I gestured the about face. 12 confused helmets stared blankly at me until I did the gesture again. When we began moving, I gestured double time, feeling very sorry for Int and Yunk. Less so for Brent. As we jogged, Gruff came closer and triggered his helmet radio. "What's the word, Staff Sergeant?" he asked. "Bird's gonna pick us back up. Something happened, so they're gonna take care of the cave a different way. We're running because they told us to, and you know what that means." "Fuck, what you think, A3 or A2? "Definitely A2. I'm pretty sure the Liberty is out of A3, I replied. "Yeah, we've used a lot of them." Gruff laughed as he returned to his position. Despite the exhaustion of 3 of our members, we were able to make good time back to the landing zone. The shuttle was waiting for us with its defense turrets deployed. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. This was unusual. Something's off. Command changes its mind about our missions all the time, but a pilot waiting groundside? What the hell happened? I gestured a halt and ran up to the back of the bird, weapon ready but not raised. The pilot looked back at me. "Hey, get the fuck in. I've been waiting for you and we've got to get the hell out of here. Let's go, Marine." I gestured for everyone to load up as I took my seat nearest the hatch. I felt dumb, but I've learned the hard way that it's better safe than sorry. Plus, it's likely that the something off I detected is much higher up than I can see. I did a head count as my Marines passed me to take their seats. 12 plus me is 13, all here. "We're loaded, let's go," I told the pilot. The engines whirred up, a silent hum followed by a slightly louder whir and whoosh. It would have been quieter had the pilot closed the hatch. "Why's the bay door still open, sir?" PFC Rogers asked the pilot. "What, you don't want to watch the detonation?" the pilot asked with a tone of amusement. 13 Guardian helmets immediately turned towards the bay door as the shuttle rose. I increased my magnification, looking for the cave we'd been trekking toward. I saw a fiery object head towards the ground from the sky, moving very quickly. When it reached the ground, everything went dark for half a second, and we all saw the telltale sign of an artificial event horizon. "You were right, Staff Sergeant. It was an A2, Gruff said with awe in his voice. "Damn, that's an A2? The hell do they need us for if they've got that?" asked Reinhardt. We're cheaper, replied Int. Way cheaper. Even with the suits, asked PFC Johns. Especially with the suits, HM Young chimed in. Marines last far longer, leave less collateral damage, and you tend to get more bang for your buck. Plus, you don't need an admiral to give the go-ahead to launch Marines. Yunk was technically part of the Navy, but like all corpsmen was an honorary Marine. He continued his explanation as the event horizon vanished and the bay door closed. A WMD like the A2 costs 3 times as much as training and equipping an entire battalion of Marines, and it costs twice as much as the lifetime payouts if all of those Marines died or were crippled. The A3 is cheaper, but still more expensive than just sending us in to deal with it. He paused. Staffs aren't, why'd they change their mind? Beats me, I said. You think it has to do with the attack on Seoul? Asked PFC Boyle. Seoul was attacked? By who? I asked. I had basically locked myself down during leave and hadn't paid attention to the news. Yes, Staff Sergeant, Boyle replied, stiffening under the attention. I don't know who exactly, but it's some sort of robotic thing, like a rogue VI or something. That's not it, Brent interrupted. It's a first contact scenario with a hostile machine intelligence. We've also made contact with another galactic government called the Republic. They're supposedly helping us defend Seoul because they dragged us into their war with the robots. Yeah, that's right, Livingston said. The machines are called the Omni Union or something. I see. Dumb name. But yeah, that's probably it. We'll likely learn more when we get back to the ship, I said with a yawn and a wave that signified my intent to catch some shut-eye. I turned off my visor and closed my eyes as the other Marines chattered amongst themselves. I slept the entire ride and woke when the shuttle jerked from the docking clamps. When I turned my visor back on, I saw that Gruff was the only Marine awake. He nodded to me and I gestured a shh. I keyed my comms. Rise and shine, Marines. We've arrived at the blessed landing deck of the USS Liberty. Every one of the PFCs nearly jumped out of their suits, but the non-coms were nonplussed. They were used to my antics, not that it spoiled my fun at all. 5 more minutes, Staff Sergeant, Corporal Chang said. Abso-fucking-lutely not Chang. Get your ass out of my shuttle and stow your gear, I said, kicking his boot. I chased the Marines off the shuttle, smacking helmets and shouting the entire way. As I followed them down the gangway, I spotted our platoon leader and company commander waiting for us. Shit. All 13 of us stopped and saluted. As you were, Marines, Captain Michaels said as he returned our salute. Y'all go get some chow or something. Staff Sergeant Power, a word, please. Lieutenant Vasquez also returned our salute. My Marines walked away, each of them looking back at me. I could tell they were wondering if I had got into trouble or something. So was I, for that matter. It's not as if you find yourself talking to the company CO as a squad leader for any other reason very often. Don't worry, Staff Sergeant, you're not in any trouble, Captain Michaels said with a knowing smile. We've got a special operation. Lieutenant? Yes, sir. Power, your squad is to report to the command room at 0800 tomorrow for briefing. I want a gear check done tonight. Everything needs to be cleaned and reloaded ASAP, Vasquez said. Aye, sir. Excellent, as you were. I saluted once more, and after returning my salute, the 2 officers turned away. I felt like I dodged a bullet only to land on a grenade. I jogged to catch up to my squad and passed along the word. After saying I don't know to a bunch of questions, I found myself alone with my thoughts. Special operation? How did the big green dick plan on fucking us this time?